Lois has stayed at an orphanage home ever since she was a baby. She was seen by the roadside near the grocery store and taken to the orphanage home until she was old enough to take care of herself. Since she left, her life has been nothing short of a roller coaster. No help was forthcoming as no one was willing to adopt her, as they all complained that she acted weird. Everyone that came to adopt her was sure to come back to return her. This must have been because she grew up as a loner. She lived a very private life as a little girl and could pass for a chronic introvert. This was not something any of her wards could cope with. Lois is a young teen with a lot of potential, and she lives on government stipends, as that was the only way she could continue her education. However, as adulthood hits, responsibilities get heightened, and the government stipends could only solve some of her expenses. She decided it was time to go outside the box in the quest to survive. She thought it would be wise to get a side hustle. I just hope I get the job, she said to herself as she took her bicycle and rode down the road for an interview she had seen the previous day. While still lost in her thoughts of what to expect at the interview, Lois got carried away that she accidentally collided with a mini ice cream store not too far away from the company she was heading to for an interview. She quickly got off the ground and apologized to the man she had just hit. This man managed to stand up from the floor. He was knocked on with a rage in his eyes. He didn't look like he was going to take it, as he looked so furious. He wasn't expected to smile anyway. That was his business that just got ruined. It was at this point Lois knew she was in deep shit, a big one at that. Is it not enough that she's poor? Now she's even in debt. She was sure her stipends wouldn't be enough to sort the unexpected bills. All she could do at this point was to plead with the man to look for an easy and fast way that she could pay him. Since she was an orphan off to get a job, she suggested the man hire her on a contract until she could cover the debts. The man seems not to be moved by her words. He brought out his phone immediately without commenting on Lois's request. He placed a call through to his friend, who is an accident lawyer. "Hey man, I need your help. Come to my base right now," he said over the phone, and in no time a young man with a briefcase who should be in his 30s approached Lois and the man. Lois thought it must be the lawyer this man earlier called for a second. The lawyer grinned at Lois like all was well. Lois knows she's in for a long one. She decided to negotiate with the lawyer, an expert on such a case. In a more pleasant but baritone voice, the lawyer said to Lois, "Hello, miss. You have to pay at least 70% of the things you've damaged, else you might be charged to court. Besides, you are of age," he said bluntly. Lois swiftly went to her knees because she didn't want to go to jail. The lawyer smiled softly when he realized she was scared of what might be the outcome of everything. He recognized her fear, decided to capitalize on it, and ensured every of Lois's details was taken and followed up immediately. Lois went back home as she was unable to go for the interview because of the incredible saga. She kept calling the lawyer as she thought he could tamper justice with mercy and pity a poor orphan girl like her. After a few days to cool off, she went on to get a side hustle, since the man won't hire her to pay him. She worked hard, but the accident lawyer was collecting everything from her, making her life a mess. She could barely feed herself. When she felt she had paid enough, the lawyer appeared at her doorstep and threatened to charge her to court if she did not produce another certain amount. Something she never wanted was to be assigned to court at a young age, as she feels that will be a forever stigma on her personality. Lois doesn't want to be tagged as an ex-convict. The fear of being jailed, which was planted inside her by the lawyer, grew more robust, and the matter was getting out of hand as she was beginning to lose her cool due to frustration and the frequent visitation of the lawyer in her small apartment. Still, she continued to pay up every time he showed up. The lawyer would intimidate her and put pressure on her. She tried to get help, met people, and looked for a way around him, but there was no success, as it seemed the lawyer had experience on his shoulder. She had to double her side hustle to meet his demands, but the lawyer never seemed tired of returning. Her frustration hit its peak. She felt she could no longer bear it. She confronted the lawyer and told him she was done paying him, as it seemed he was extorting her. The lawyer loved the challenge, as it was his time to flaunt his prowess and intimidate Lois. He brought out some fake documents of how much she had paid and how much she had left to pay. Lois, however, wasn't patronizing him this time, as she shook her head in disagreement. She knew she had paid over double of what she was shown, but the lawyer won, as he was able to maneuver her with his regular statement, but this time in a super crafted and compelling way. Dear Lois, I'm only advising you like an elder brother. You have to keep paying to avoid the case getting to court. Any judge will not take it lightly, and I am only helping you so you don't end up being arrested or going to jail, as you are above 18. Lois silently cursed herself for being of age, as the last statement always gets to her head. The rage of anger flowed freely in her body as she looked at the lawyer in the face bitterly, with so many thoughts running through her head. She continued to be a slave to her ignorance. It was already telling on her academics, as she now misses classes and has no time for the classes missed. She was always busy trying to meet the lawyer's payday to avoid going to jail. After a long while of being fooled, she decided to take the bold step of visiting the ice cream man's shop to ask him personally how much more she had to pay. The man hit his kiosk with her bicycle. To her most excellent amusement, the ice cream vendor was no longer at that location. She could locate him after asking about the whereabouts of the residents. She asked the question and was shocked after the man told him she had paid up for a long while. This time it dawned on him that the lawyer had only been extorting her to sort his bills. She was furious and promised to fight back most wisely. She thanked the ice cream vendor for being honest. She headed to a bar to cool off as she figured out a plan. He will surely go down for this, she said as she gulped the remnant of her drinks and dashed out of the bar. She became very regular in a law library. She started reading about laws that guide accidents. She realized she had only been dancing to his tune all this while. When she knew she was ready, she came up with a plan on how to make him pay for messing with the wrong person. She smiled at her progress and never ruled out that she could have done better from the beginning. She promised that was the last time anybody would ever cheat her, as she now knew her rights. She pledged to implement her discoveries at any necessary time. Another payday had come, and the lawyer had come for his upkeep. Lois handed him the money. She then asked for her payment account, as she would also love to have a copy with her to monitor how much she has been paying. That surprised the lawyer, as he reluctantly handed her a copy, leaving them in disbelief. This girl is beginning to grow wings, he muttered as he approached his car. Lois went to the bank for her statement of account and noted the number of times she has been paying what she now refers to as forever debt. She repeated the payment 5 more times and decided it was time for the lawyer to face the law. The lawyer came as usual, but only to meet an unusual Lois. She is now bold, and luckily the lawyer is too greedy to realize her plans. He threatened the court and how her life would be ruined soon and promised to return with a letter from the court, as he was going to file a case against her and make sure she faced the law. His words no longer moved Lois. She told him to bring it on. After what seemed to be a long week of waiting for the lawyer's court letter, nothing came forth. He must have realized the new development. He tried his best to stay away, which did not please Lois, as she was hoping to make him face the law for taking advantage of her weakness. The hunter became haunted by the case, as Lois eventually filed a lawsuit against the lawyer. He was shocked to receive such a letter and had no choice but to appear in front of the law. Lois looked for more victims of the same or similar case whom the lawyer had jilted. She planted a decoy who had trailed and secretly observed the lawyer's movements for the past weeks. She got a lawyer, and with the evidence at her disposal, she was about to win him after being represented well by her lawyer. With the revelation of the ice cream man, she had gained his trust and showed all the wrong side of the lawyer he once referred to as a friend. The ice cream vendor was disappointed to find out the truth, which was his reason for testifying against his lawyer friend. He said, "Irrespective of our friendship and what we share, honesty comes first." The lawyer was found guilty of all the accusations charged against him. His license to practice as a lawyer was revoked, and he was made to pay back most of the money he extorted from the people, and was also given a 5-year jail term to serve as a lesson to other desperate opportunists like him. Lois was pleased with the court's judgment as she went home happily. Her interest in becoming a lawyer had grown even more, and she promised to study law after her first degree. The lawyer regretted underrating the young teen. He regretted letting his greed get the best of him, as there were obvious signs he neglected. He regretted not taking the proper precaution in a bid to solve the minor accident that has now led to him losing his career to what he failed to do right. He promised to be a better person once he came out of jail. "Karma caught up with me big time," he said as he was escorted into the police van with handcuffs. What an embarrassing moment. Lois getting paid back half of what the lawyer had extorted from her was the most exciting part of her decision. She decided to use the money to nurture her academics. She continued her life, but stood by her decision to always bring to justice anybody that tried to intimidate her or anyone that used the law for a corrupt purpose. Justice will always prevail. No knowledge is lost. The more you know, the more you progress. Lois lay on her bed, thinking about the event of the day, as she took a relief sigh. A part of her felt for the lawyer, who is now a prisoner for failing in his responsibility as a lawyer and a defender of the law. But above all, she is happy justice was served.
The bright-eyed little girl ran along the shore. Her mother died in childbirth, and her father was responsible for her upbringing. The tall, lean man was hard on the girl. They lived in the old den. The wooden hut somehow held the heat from each crack that blew cold sea air. The man worked as a guard on the lighthouse. His task was to turn on the lantern for lost ships. She saved people's lives from the seamouth. The girl grew up on her own. Mary did not keep her company telling her stories. She was like a wild reed craving companionship. Her father restricted her from civilization. There was nothing in the house but a wooden table, a couple of chairs, and a bed. Once a week, Mike, her father's name, went shopping. Their diet consisted of black bread, macaroni, and some croup. They were supplied with fish by the sea. These days, the baby was left on the island all alone. "Oh, that's beautiful." She opened the electric board, said the little rascal. Dad was gone. He was late. Mary thought Dad was lost at sea and maybe he needed help. "For Dad to find me, I need to turn on the lantern on the lighthouse. He will see and will come home." Thin baby hands reached into thick electrical wires. She was saving her dad. Before she could get the cable, there was a bang, and many tiny sparks shone across her face. Ow! It hurt so much. Trying to cover her face with her hands, she fell on the cold, damp ground. A couple of hours later, her father moored to the shore. He didn't see the blonde girl running. He suspected something was wrong. The father's heart was popping out of his chest. Out of breath, the father's heart was popping out of his chest. Out of breath, he ran to the house, but no one was there. After looking through all the daughter's favorite places, he did not find her. There was only one place, the lighthouse. The lighthouse door was open. "Dad, where are you?" Mary's voice was barely heard. "Mary, my daughter, what happened?" The lighthouse keeper shouted. The little girl was lying there with no sign of life. Massive tears were coming out of her eyes. Her father raised his daughter with shaking hands. His daughter had an accident. Mike dragged her outside. "Dad, why is it so dark?" Father looked at his only daughter with horror. The light was shining in the yard. His lips trembled. "So now is the night." The desperate father answered, choking in his tears. She went blind. All life was divided, before and after. Now she had to learn to live in a new way. It had to be a clean slate. He wondered how to explain to poor Mary that she would never see sunlight. How did the seasons change? The 7-year-old girl continued to lie in the man's hands. The father fell to his knees. Pressing his daughter, he wept with all his might. "God, why are you punishing me like this?" He turned to the sky. "You took my wife, and now you want to deprive my daughter of me?" Poor Mike. With the last strength in his fist, he carried his daughter into the house. "Honey, now we have to learn to live in a new way." Tears continued to flow from Mary's eyes. Then she understood the situation. Her childhood world was immersed in eternal darkness. Lying there for a couple of days, she tried to get up. Her white feet stood on a cold wooden floor. She fell a couple of steps. Fear, mistrust, and confusion stopped her. It was a cold, harsh winter. The girl was growing up. Her father tried to breathe life into Mary, but she felt nothing. Her eyes were always cold. She tried to see something, closed her eye, and she squinted all the time, but the result was not there. Having reached the age of 18, the father decided to put his daughter in a specialized boarding school. There were children with various defects, as their parents called them. Mary cried and did not want to let go of her father. After all, she had no mother. She was afraid of losing the one person she knew. The teachers at school were strict. The children were very violent. These children never saw the faces of their natural parents. Their parents had long since abandoned them. They had written them out of their lives. They had not loved Mary since the first day. She was too bright. She was always fighting for justice, defending her point of view. She was trying to survive in a violent environment. Her only consolation was her friend Emma. The girls quickly hit it off. Emma saw but could not hear. She was her eyes. The girls spent all their time together. Emma talked about everything around them, and Mary painted in her imagination the bright world in which she lived. It did not last long. Emma was soon adopted. Mary felt abandoned and forgotten. Mike visited his daughter very rarely. He tried to find a good job and ran to the doctors hoping that at least someone could help him regain his daughter's sight. Everyone had their hands up and refused him. She spent 10 years in this horrible place. Mike took her home after graduating. The lighthouse has been recognized as a local attraction for all these years of absence. Crowds of tourists began to visit the island. But even this did not save the financial situation of the family. It is worth noting that she acquired a unique ability with the loss of vision. She sang very beautifully. She sang songs every time she walked in the open air. She remembered and knew every hillock. Twisting her memories from childhood, she was afraid to forget the brightest moments. As she walked, she hummed her new song. Her eyes were full of tears. She constantly cried as she sang. On that day, another group of visitors arrived on the island. The guide Lively kept the historical story about the old lighthouse. Tourists listened to him very carefully. Among them were two guys. These were young sailors who had just returned from a long voyage. JC, the blonde-haired guy, was different from his friend. JC's friend was too frivolous. At that moment, she was sitting on the hill. The wind was playing in her long, thick hair. Her gaze was drawn further away, trying to see something. JC fell in love with Mary at first sight. He didn't know the girl was blind. He snuck up and tried to capture her on his camera. Hearing the camera click, the girl hurried away. She was avoiding people. But the persistent young man found the right words to win the young lady over to him. Looking into her eyes, he saw the emptiness and despair. Mary looked at his face with her hands. Her long fingers glided over his face. She tried not to miss the features of his face. As she spent her evenings talking, she fell in love with a boy. No one cared or cared more about her than would live without him. His health deteriorated. He had terminal cancer. A terrible cough with blood kept torturing him. Frequent fainting spells prevented his daughter from having a happy life. He left his little girl in the hands of a violent world. Learning that Mary could regain her sight with expensive surgery, JC went to his beloved father. Her father listened to him and said he could not collect such money, and there was no one to lend. He did not have such an amount. JC wanted Mary to start seeing him. JC's crime was the only way to get Mary's sight back. He committed the robbery and secretly sent all the money to the clinic where the surgery was due. That evening was the last time Mary heard the voice of her loved one. JC was forced to resort to deception. He told her that he needed to go on a long sail. The girl's heart trembled. Everyone she loved so much refused her, but she knew he wouldn't be happy with a blind woman. After the act, the boy surrendered to the local police and was given 5 years in prison as punishment. Mary underwent an operation, after which she regained her sight. Meanwhile, the girl learned that she was pregnant. She would have a son. Her father soon died. Now she was alone in this vast world. She gave birth to a son and did not stop waiting for her lover. All day she walked, looking into the faces. She was looking for him, her boyfriend. It was hard to imagine him. She never saw him, only felt his body. She named her son Robert. She came to live on the island alone with her child. It was difficult for her to feed the child at the same time and provide for her financially. In such a limbo, she could not take care of the child. Robert was restless, constantly crying. There was no help. One day, having gathered her son, Mary went to the nearest grocery store. Leaving her son on the street, she tried to leave in a hurry, but the loud cry of her child stopped her. God, what am I doing? She went back to her son. With the child, she wandered the dark streets all night. There was a real war inside her head. She understood that the child was from her lover, which was the fruit of their true love. It was tough for her to live on. She ran out of money. One day, she decided to take her own life. She stepped up the highway with trembling hands and tears in her eyes, suffocating with tears. The sparkle of the headlights blinded her. One car braked sharply in front of her. The driver got out of the vehicle and began shouting at her. She stood, petrified, her son bursting with tears. The man grabbed her and the child and put them in the car and drove them home. He was shocked to see the state of their home and poverty they were living in. He understood what the girl was running from. He understood why she wanted to kill herself and her child. "I'm so tired of living. These problems are constantly weighing on my shoulders." She talked and cried at the same time. Sam, the name of her savior, promised to help her. It was painful for him to watch as a young mother struggled to survive in this vast world. The difficulty was that she had never met her lover. In her memories, there was only a voice and image that she imagined for herself. Maybe there was no such person. The man understood the longer he stayed with her, the more he liked her. Mary was ready to take the courtship of a new guy. But one day, she saw her picture in Sam's folder. It was her very first picture. It was me. She froze. Under a pile of papers, she found a guy who was accused of stealing. After learning about the boy's prison, she hurried to see him. She wanted the truth. She did not expect to see her lover as she walked along a dark, damp-soaked corridor. An iron door opened, and she entered the meeting room. She had to wait a few minutes and felt like her whole life was flashing before her eyes. The door opened, but she hesitated to turn. A man's trembling voice called out to her, "Mary!" Hearing his voice, she fell unconscious. She came to her senses and said, "It's that voice. It's him. I found you." After talking to JC, she returned home. Sam sat there as if nothing was happening. Then she realized that Sam was deliberately hiding all the information. He decided to take JC's place, but Mary continued to be calm. Her lover had 6 months to wait before he went to prison. Then they could start over and raise the boy. Sam tried his best to extend JC's sentence, and his goal was to get rid of JC forever, but fate told him otherwise. Mary miraculously learned of Sam's treacherous plan. He tried to deceptively marry the girl, to take away the hut that was in the lighthouse. 3 months had passed. JC was out of prison. During that time, Mary lived in a hut near the lighthouse. Another sleepless night passed. One morning, her son woke up and ran to pick up the seashells after the storm. "Mom," said the child's voice. The woman shuddered. Sam stood on the shore and looked at them with a smile. Mary screamed and ran to kiss her lover. Within a week, they found the right words and explained to Robert that they now had a fully fledged family. "Was your dad?" She said nothing with tears in her eyes. But there was one unfinished business. It was Sam. Mary told about the schemes of the cunning man. JC decided to seek help from the relevant authorities. When he arrived there, he met a friend with whom he went on the same excursion where he saw Mary and lost his mind a few years ago. His friend listened to his story. He promised to help. Soon Sam's frauds were exposed, and the man was imprisoned. The happy family decided to sell all the property and leave the island. With the money they received, they bought a house where they raised their children in perfect harmony.
I repeat once again, Miss Logan has looked around the class. It's not even a misdemeanor, it's a crime. Stealing money from a teacher is a disgrace to the whole school. We'll have to search every student. Mr. Andrews, the head of security, walked up to the first desk, and the students dutifully took out their bags. And you look at the cow. Well, Stone has assured her, a voice from the bottom desks. She is poor and starving. She needs money. The spotted girl took the money, I'm telling you. When Andrews came to Emma, she also calmly put her battered backpack because she had nothing to fear and was used to insults. The man opened the bag, groped for a moment with his hand, and suddenly cried out. He pulled out his hand, in which he was clutching the purse. "It's not yours. It belongs to Miss Logan. Cheeky, you think you're stealing from my school? Well, I'm going to give you a hard time right now." The guard hung over a girl who didn't understand. "It's not mine, and I didn't take anything. It's a mistake, a mistake." Emma trembled. She didn't take that wallet. How it could have happened, she didn't understand. "There's our thief! Shame on you! Thief! Come here, thief!" the teacher almost screamed. Poor Emma didn't understand anything. She dutifully approached Miss Logan, who wouldn't stop screaming. And when the girl looked at her classmates, she saw that several girls were almost laughing. They had bullied her before, but that was the last straw. They framed her, and she would never prove anything. These girls purposely stole money from the teacher and planted on her to shame and humiliate her. It was the end. Emma didn't understand why she was so hated. She just stood there, swallowing tears, thinking about how she wanted to disappear so that no one would ever hurt her or yell at her again. And these girls were pointing their fingers at her and laughing. Emma Stone got used to humiliation and challenging life. The girl's mother died when the baby was not even 5 years old, and her father left the family earlier. The girl was raised by her grandmother, who was always ill. Money was always scarce, and Emma was accustomed to poverty and constant criticism and humiliation from others. Older girls always beat her and called her names for her clothes. She lived on the outskirts of town in a small house that didn't even have proper water. Emma always dreamed of breaking out of poverty and buying herself and Grandma the best. She suffered from childhood from a rare disease, vitiligo. Emma's dark body was covered with bright spots of various shapes and sizes. Only her pretty face was untouched. Big, kind eyes, beautiful features. For some reason, nobody noticed it. Everyone saw only skimpy clothes and hateful spots. The girl tried to wear closed clothes, even in the heat, but it did not help her. Her classmates constantly bullied her and called her names. They only called her Cow, and no one called Emma by name. The school's teachers turned a blind eye to all the injustices. And the old grandmother couldn't do anything. She cried in the evenings, seeing the suffering of her beloved granddaughter. The girl often dreamed that her wealthy and successful father would appear one day and take them out of poverty. But Dad didn't show up. Her grandmother was finding it increasingly difficult to maintain them financially, and she was often sick. Emma struggled to help her grandmother, and she took a part-time job. The money theft at school was the last straw, and Grandma moved Emma to another school. The school children met the girl better there, but she also did not want to communicate with anyone. The teenagers avoided Emma because she was not like them. The girl accepted that no one wanted to communicate with her and be friends with her, and she became even more isolated. She wanted to leave this city. And then another new girl appeared in the class. Rita, the red-haired chatterbox, quickly won everyone's love. She was friendly and outgoing. And the main thing is, for some reason, she decided she had to help the quiet Emma in everything. It was like Rita had never seen Emma's poverty or stranglehold. She was okay with her. The girl gave her beautiful clothes, made her get a fancy haircut, and did not hide her body under robes. Rita first told Emma about her beauty and offered to go to one of the modeling agencies to try her hand. Emma refused for a long time because she didn't believe in herself or her abilities. But after high school, the girls finally decided to leave their little town. Rita went to college, and Emma decided to work part-time and then go to college. The friends promised to call each other every day. Emma got a job in a small flower shop. She still dreamed of a successful future and a promising career. Rita got the girl to believe in herself. Life was running smoothly until another customer came into the store one day. The man picked out the flowers for a long time, but then he went to Emma and talked to her. He said his name was Mr. Porter, and he owned a modeling agency in New York City, and he was just impressed by her appearance. He said he was willing to sign her right there because he saw a lot of potentials and work for her. And her peculiarity, the girl was wearing a t-shirt and there were spots on her hands, would become her chip. Just imagine, dear, the man smiled sweetly to the girl, all the world podiums will be conquered. You are so beautiful. Contracts will fall on you. You will become rich and will not sit in this God-forsaken place. Such a face should see the whole world. Emma was surprised. She didn't know what to do. She said she needed to consult with her friend, but Mr. Porter was insistent and said that the time to agree was now. The girl asked for a chance to think for at least a few days. She understood that this could be her opportunity, because Rita always talked about her place in modeling with such a beautiful face and figure. She called her friend. Rita freaked out and asked Emma not to go anywhere because the man could be a con artist. But Emma already believed him and had a chance to change her life. Rita begged the girl not to do anything stupid, but Emma just hung up. She made her own decision for the first time, and she was very proud of it. She was a little embarrassed in front of her friend, but the girl decided to make it up to her later when wealth and success became apparent. And then she agreed to go with this man, although she did not know him. She believed that the new world of the big city could give her wealth and glory. She wanted to make her grandmother's life happy and carefree. When they came to New York, he put a girl up in a small apartment on the outskirts of town and sometimes took her to some weird auditions. Then, Mr. Porter started talking about how she needed money to do a good job and had to borrow it from someone. Then he said the apartment had to be paid for, and she would have to do questionable advertising. Porter was rude to her. He could be gone for days, leaving the poor girl practically without food. She had no one to turn to, so he took her phone away. Emma was afraid of a man. He could intimidate and crush them psychologically. Emma realized the man had deceived her and taken advantage of her naivety. The girl worked hard, but hardly saw the money she earned. Mr. Porter kept reminding her they had a contract that gave him most of the profits. Emma signed it there in her little town. She didn't read the papers, trusting Porter's words. The girl had to take any job. Porter was in control and wouldn't let Emma keep the money. He began to humiliate and intimidate her. And Porter started drinking and getting handsy. Emma was on the verge of desperation. The last straw was that he wouldn't let her go to Grandma. The girl called about the house neighbors and found that Grandma was very ill, but Porter forbade her to go, again recalling the contract. It helped the girl in this situation that the same day the hateful man was hit by a car. Porter got drunk and crossed the road in the wrong place. The universe took pity on the poor girl. Their home number was clogged in his cell phone as an emergency, so Emma discovered that Porter was in a coma. She came to the hospital, where she guessed the man was her uncle. The nurse gave him his belongings, including a purse with money. The girl took them without hesitation and went to her grandmother's. She was with Grandma for a couple of days, then died quietly in her sleep. The girl was inconsolable. She blamed herself for everything and didn't know how to go on. She had nowhere to go but to stay in their poor house. She didn't even know who owned that apartment in New York and didn't want to go back there. And then she got a call from her cell phone, which they gave away along with Porter's things. "Hello, Emma," Rita's quiet voice sounded. "I know about your grandmother. I'm so sorry. Why didn't you call me? Because I could help you. Where have you gone? I was so looking forward to your call. I will come tomorrow and we will discuss and decide." Rita came. She helped organize the funeral, and then Emma told her about all her misadventures. Rita was shocked. She blamed herself for not being able to hold Emma. The girls cried for a long time in a hug. Both knew that the two would be easier for them. The girls returned to New York to Emma's apartment. When the girl turned on the answering machine on her phone, she heard that Porter had died. Emma was ashamed, but she felt relieved. Now she was free. Leaving this little apartment, Emma looked at herself in the hall mirror. Her face was slipping, and the spots were more visible against a background of stress, but there was hope for the best in her eyes. The girl promised herself that now she would start a new happy life for her and Grandma. It's been a couple of months. Rita introduced the girl to one of the scouts of a famous modeling agency. He was delighted with Emma's appearance and immediately offered her an entire 5-year contract. This work was not like the one she had to do before. Beautiful places and professional photographers' trips worldwide. Couturier adored Emma's texture, and the offers came in. Emma was incredibly popular, and she had her TV show where she helped young models become successful. She loved this class, and then she published a book about her hard life and became a world bestseller. Emma didn't believe any of this was happening to her. That girl in the rags can now afford to buy anything from a fancy and expensive boutique. Wealth hasn't spoiled her. She was just as humble and kind and wanted to help many people. Emma knew how hard it could be to have no one to help you. She also made Rita her assistant. She often remembered her grandmother and wished she had seen such success. The girl wanted to give as much happiness as possible to those who needed it. She opened several schools for poor children, did a lot of charity work, and helped people with the same disease as her. One day, Emma's agent told her that a fashion magazine wanted to interview her. Emma was sitting in her dressing room when the blonde woman entered the room. Emma thought she looked familiar, but couldn't figure out where they might have met. And when the journalist asked what the secret of her success was, Emma said with a smile, "You know, I have spots on my body, and I'm not ashamed of them. It is much worse when a person has a stain on his soul from what he does to others, and he is not ashamed. Be honest. Do not hurt others. Be beautiful not only outside, let the beauty come from within. I love this world, even if it is hard and painful. That's when you are guaranteed to succeed. Then the universe will give you happiness." The journalist looked away and whispered, "Forgive me. Forgive us all." It turns out that one of the girls once framed poor Emma by planting her teacher's wallet. And now the girl was very ashamed and realized they could have ruined poor Emma's life for good. And Emma forgave them. After so many trials, she didn't become evil and treacherous. She just wanted happiness and peace for everyone.